Good morning on this Resurrection Day to Cornerstone and all our friends. I want to read from a couple of places in the New Testament regarding the resurrection of Jesus, some very interesting examples of a response to the resurrection. The first place we're going to go is to John's Gospel and chapter 20. Verse 24. But one of the 12, Thomas, called Twin, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples kept telling him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "If I don't see the mark of the nails in his hands, put my finger into the mark of the nails, and put my hand into his side, I will never believe." After 8 days his disciples were indoors again, and Thomas was with them. Even though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them. He said, "Peace to you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and observe my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Don't be an unbeliever, but a believer." Thomas responded to him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Those who believe without seeing are blessed." Now, I think we have a commentary here on human behavior. We have the facts. The facts were known. There were witnesses to the resurrection of Jesus. They were reliable witnesses. The evidence is there. It's out there. It's always been there. Even the Jewish historian Josephus in the first century, he accepted the facts. He wasn't really a follower of Jesus, but he accepted the facts. He reports on the resurrection of Jesus, the Messiah. Many people have examined the facts. Lawyers, they've looked at it and said, yeah, in all probability, taking everything into account, the resurrection, it's real. It did happen. We have witnesses to it. It's reliable. Now, here's something about the human condition. And Thomas helps us with this. I don't have a down on Thomas. Not at all. I think he had, for what seemed to him to be a reasonable doubt. And there was something he was looking for. And we don't know what it is immediately, but back to that in a moment. The human condition is extremely interesting. So we have all this stuff out there, propaganda, fake news, and there must be enough people interested in it, otherwise it wouldn't happen. Many people will believe things without evidence. Many people will believe things which, if some thought was given, it's blatantly obvious they're not true, but they believe it anyway. But then there's the other kind of person, and maybe you're that kind of person. I would tend to be in this camp. We're very skeptical about everything. We need to know, where is the evidence? Can we prove that this actually took place? Not just about the resurrection, of course, but about many things. But when it comes to the issue of Jesus, the fact that he rose from the dead, now we've upped the stakes a great deal. Because this is much more than just propaganda or fake news. This is beyond any form of skepticism. It is the most significant event in the history of the world. And even though there is evidence for it, it is mostly not believed. So here's Thomas. He wasn't there with the other guys when they saw Jesus. And when they told him, you would have thought he knows these men well enough. They're not fools. They're not gullible. They've been with Jesus, and so had he. And they had seen what he had said and done. They trusted him. And when they said he's risen, you would think he should have believed them. What I want to say is this, that facts are not enough. It is perfectly possible to believe all the facts, to know without any kind of doubt whatsoever that not only did Jesus live and he died on the cross, that's history, but he rose from the dead. That's history. It's possible to know that and say, yes, I believe that that is true. And that's the end of the matter. Nothing changes. Nothing impacts your life. You carry on the same as you were before. You are not really a follower of Jesus, just somebody who knows, well, that's true. I get that. Now, I don't think Thomas was in that camp at all. I think there was something else. Now, he said something which seems to be reasonable. Unless I see, unless I put my fingers into the hands where the wounds were made, I will not believe. But is that really what he was looking for? Now, I think this is what the human condition is like. I'm really thinking now of the seeker of the truth, not the person that is running away and hiding from God, but a true seeker. I think that Thomas was a true seeker. He wanted to see Jesus. He wanted to believe. And so in the processing of his own mind, he said, unless I see and do. But actually, when Jesus came on the scene, that wasn't the case at all. When he saw Jesus, something radical happened. In other words, the facts were overwhelmed by faith. He didn't need the scene anymore because he believed. He actually believed over and above what the facts might have first presented. He said, my Lord and my God. Now here is the really encouraging thing. When somebody who is a true seeker and they have questions, they have doubts, they may seem to be reasonable doubts, God does not leave us to our own devices. Because our own devices will trip us up. They will take us down the wrong route. They will lead us to the wrong or inadequate conclusion. You see, when Jesus came and he looked at Thomas, and Thomas looked at him, faith rose up and he believed. Now, what we really need to know about faith is this. Faith was not outside of the facts. The facts were still needed because they were true. Faith was a response to the facts, but it was at a whole greater level. Faith is what changes you, but it's based upon the truth. It doesn't countermand the truth. It doesn't put the truth to one side. It doesn't discount the truth. It is actually the right response to truth. And because we of ourselves in our fallen nature are inadequate in that area, we cannot pull up the faith of ourselves. We cannot make it happen by believing and believing and believing. This is the grace of God to us. When Jesus looked at Thomas, he saw his heart and he enabled him to respond to what was clearly true by believing. Now, of course, then Jesus goes on to make that wonderful statement that applies to us. We weren't there. We didn't see Jesus in the historical sense. We were not there in that moment of history. We have not seen, but have we seen? The facts are there. They are real. And today, he comes to enable us so that faith might rise up and we might know him. See, that's what Thomas really wanted. He wanted to know him in all reality, beyond the superficial, facts plus, so that he might know Jesus truly and fully for himself. Now here's another story, and again, we know this story well. We would have to go to Luke's Gospel here, and in chapter 24, it's the passage about Emmaus. Now let me read a little bit of it. I won't read the whole section, but you know the story. Verse 13. Now that same day, two of them were on their way to a village called Emmaus, which was about 7 miles from Jerusalem. Together they were discussing everything that had taken place. And while they were discussing and arguing, Jesus himself came near and began to walk along with them. But they were prevented from recognizing him. Then, of course, we have the discourse, we have the whole conversation that is taking place as they walk along this road. It was deep conversation, it was inquiring conversation, and they got really into it. They were hoping somehow that Jesus would be that Messiah, that he would be the Redeemer that they were waiting for. And Jesus, he took them back over a journey of history and theology, relating way back into the time of Moses, going through, explaining. He taught of the prophets, and he interpreted the history. Verse 28. They came near the village where they were going, and he gave the impression that he was going farther, but they urged him, "Stay with us, because it's almost evening." Now the day is almost over, so he went in to stay with them. It was as he reclined at the table with them that he took the bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him. But he disappeared from their sight. So they said to each other, "Weren't our hearts ablaze within us while he was talking with us on the road and explaining the scriptures to us?" That very hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem. They found the 11 and those with them gathered together, who said, "The Lord has certainly been raised and has appeared to Simon." Then they began to describe what had happened on the road and how he was made known to them in the breaking of the bread. This is a different kind of story. These were good folks, no question of it. They did not fully understand. They were hoping for something. What happened was not exactly what they were hoping for, but they had a good desire. Jesus joined them on the road, and he shared things with them. It was from his point of view, not theirs. They were engaged by this truth. They were drawn into it. And with their expectations dashed, but nevertheless there was a remnant of hope within them. They wanted to hear more from this man, this remarkable man that somehow they were not able to see clearly. So they invited him in. and they broke bread together. Now here's the interesting thing. It was their house. It was for them to break bread. But Jesus, he took that place and he broke it in their stead. Now again, isn't this interesting? Here's these good people. I don't want to call them religious because I think they were better than that. They were God-fearing. They desired good things. They respected and loved Jesus in their own way. They had hoped for more, and yet, was it really going to happen? So Jesus himself intervened. You see, here is the condition of the heart of the truth seeker. The truth seeker of himself is not able to come to the full conclusion. The truth seeker of himself is not able to move from the place of accepting the facts to receiving the truth inwardly so that the truth could set them free. There was a buzz about them. There was an excitement. Somehow they were beginning to get it. They were beginning to see that the history of their nation was not in vain, that God was at work, maybe as their hearts were rising up in anticipation, and yet it required the intervention of Jesus himself. This is the grace of God. He does not leave us on our own. Because if he did, we would never get there. And so he took the bread and he broke it. Now, it might just be that that triggered some memories for them. Were they there on the day when Jesus fed the 5,000? I'm not really sure. Maybe it was more than just a memory. Maybe it was the way that God revealed himself to them. Because actually, that's what's needed. We come to him, we seek the truth, we have a history and knowledge and understanding, we have accepted all the facts, we even have a hope and expectation. But it isn't quite enough. Something has to be broken. And when Jesus broke the bread, he took them to a very different place. He took them to a place where the breaking of the bread opened up the truth of the events, the culmination of everything that God had said through Moses and the prophets, the culmination of the teaching of Jesus, his declaration of the kingdom, his doing of the kingdom through remarkable signs, wonders. And now they were in a place to receive because they saw Jesus from the inside for who he really was. They were no longer interested in just the facts they cannot change. They were no longer interested in their perception of the reason that a Messiah would come. Now they knew Jesus for who he really was. And that is true for us today. We might have all the information. We might be able to write a treatise on salvation history. We might be able to expound the theology of God and his purposes. We might know it well. It might even excite us. But until the bread is broken and we begin to see the inside, and we see that the facts are more than facts, they are the very truth of the purposes of God. And God invites us into that place. And from that moment, everything changed. They saw him as he broke the bread, and then off he went. But now he was with them forever, and in such a way that they were excited. And they went back and they said, He is risen. Amen. There will be a rerun of the singing that our children have done for us. And so if you missed that, then you can catch up again. And God bless you all. May the peace of Christ rule in your hearts. Let us be thankful for Jesus who is risen. Let us be thankful that he does not leave us to our own devices, but he takes hold of everything that is true, and by his grace, he draws us to himself. And now we are called to live in the power of the resurrection of Jesus, the Son of God, the Savior of all who will come to him.